This is an ABB presentation of 2016 Economic Transmission Outlook. This presentation will last approximately 30 minutes and telephones will be muted for the duration of the call. If you have questions, please submit them to the chat or the Q&A window in your WebEx screen. Today's speaker from the ABB Advisors team is Keith Smith, Manager of the Nodal Market Advisors. Keith, you may begin.
Thank you, Dana. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me this afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. We're going to talk a little bit about economic transmission, the outlook for 2016, and we're going to take a look back into what's happened over the last couple of years related to economic transmission and FERC 1000. First, a little disclaimer that the information is subject to change without notice, and it's not a commitment by ABB, and we're not liable. So let's just get that out of the way. I work on the advisory team here at ABB, and this is just a look at the setup of that group, of the EPM Energy Portfolio Management Group, where we have advisory services, the reference case simulation ready data, and various software products that you may be familiar with, like ProMod and GridView, etc. But during this webcast today, we're going to do a review of Order 1000 and the requirements involved with it. We're going to look at what's happened so far over the last few years. There have been windows and analysis done by the various transmission planning organizations related to economic transmission. And we're going to talk a little bit about a few of them and some of the things they've done. And we're going to look at the outlook for 2016 as far as who is opening windows and who will open them, and what the various planning regions are doing this year in regard to economic transmission. We'll start out with a review of FERC 1000. So it's a rule related to transmission planning and the cost allocation associated with transmission planning. It builds on FERC Order 890, which called for open and coordinated planning for transmission planning, and increase the transparency and customer access to information. And a lot of the planning processes that are still in place were started related to FERC Order 890. But FERC Order 1000 goes further, or builds on 890, FERC Order 890, as it relates to planning reforms and how the planning is done, some cost allocation reforms, and the non-incumbent developer reforms, which allows for non-incumbents to participate in the process for transmission planning. Let's start out with the planning reforms. So each public utility transmission provider has to participate in a regional transmission planning process, and many of those have popped up across the country. For some, it was not I guess we'll call it not a big deal, that there were already transmission organizations like MISO, PJM, SPP in place that did transmission planning, so they already had processes that were regionally coordinated. But other areas of the country had to get together and form these groups to do regional transmission planning. Order 1000 also called for the planning processes to consider public policy requirements by states or federal laws or regulations. When you have things like the Clean Power Plan, which is kind of up in the air right now, but a federal mandate that will require generation to be built or shut down, and you may have transmission needs associated with that. Or things like state RPS's renewable portfolio standards, where you have a need to build renewables, and those renewables may have transmission associated with them. So there could be a transmission need associated with requirements from federal or state entities that should be considered during these planning processes. And the utility transmission providers also need to pair with regional partners and coordinate to determine if there are better solutions or more efficient solutions for mutual transmission needs. If you're looking at a project that crosses into another planning entity's area, you have to partner with them, with your neighbors, and have a process in place to evaluate those projects. So those are some of the planning reforms that were brought on by Order 1000. Cost allocation reforms. So these planning processes must have an allocation method for selected new transmission. When they go through these planning processes and they come up with the needs for new transmission, and then they say, hey, we're going to build it, and this costs X amount of dollars. They have to have in place a methodology to assign the cost associated with the transmission to the various entities within the planning region. For this one, assuming it's all within one region. So PJM has a methodology, MISO has a methodology, et cetera, for allocating the cost. In a regional, cost must have a methodology as well, and each of the planning entities has an agreement with its neighbor or is working on an agreement with neighboring planning process groups so that they can determine how they're going to do the cost allocation for interregional transmission projects that may be needed. The method for cost allocation has to satisfy 6 allocation principles, and we'll discuss those. And there can be different methodologies based on, in a single region, you can have different allocation methods based on a single region project or versus an interregional project. And that just kind of makes sense because different planning processes have different cost allocation methods, and that needs to be considered. So if they're different, then if you get together, you kind of have to decide how you're going to go about allocating the cost for a project. There are 6 principles associated with the allocation of costs that must be adhered to according to FERC Order 1000. So the cost allocation must be roughly commensurate with the benefits, and that means that whoever's getting the benefits should pay for it or should have costs allocated to them accordingly, roughly, again, commensurate with the benefits. It doesn't have to be exactly, but the benefits and the costs should line up. No involuntary costs can be allocated to non-beneficiaries. If you're not getting any benefit, you shouldn't get any cost. If a higher for the benefit cost ratio, it can't exceed 1.25 unless FERC approves a higher ratio. So that's just a cutoff, a guideline. The cost must be allocated within the region unless those outside voluntarily assume costs. And I would love to see that case where someone decides to take on costs when they don't have to. But so this just says the region can't assign or allocate costs to those entities that are outside the region, but they may voluntarily assume costs. The methodologies and data requirements for determining the benefits must be transparent. So that's just, we can all know how we're going to be judged or how projects are going to be judged because these processes are in place and the data is hopefully available and the data needed to determine the benefits will be available so that you can have an idea of what you expect for a cost-benefit ratio. And so we can, again, all be playing the same game, and there are no secrets behind it. And different methodologies can be chosen for different types of facilities. So you have reliability-based projects can have a cost allocation methodology congestion relief, and public policy and economic. They don't have to have the same cost allocation methodology associated with them. They can be different. Kind of just a quick list of, for large projects for a couple of regions, how they allocate the cost. For SPP, they have their classic highways and byways system, where there's regional allocation for projects above 300 kV. For projects between 300 and 100 kV, it's 33% regional allocation and 67% load allocation. For the MISO MVP process, they have a load share basis for the allocation of cost. PJM, they use 50% load share ratio and 50% distribution factor methodology called DFACS to allocate the cost of large projects. WestConnect uses production cost savings associated with projects, and ERCOT uses load share for determining the allocation of costs for large projects. The non-incumbent developer reforms. Public utility providers, they have to remove commission approval for the federal first right of refusal for our transmission facilities that are selected in these regional planning processes. So the incumbent can't just refuse and say, hey, we'll do it offhand. That's taken away, at least on a federal for regional projects. I believe the individual states can still have this first right of refusal in their laws and regulations. And it also requires reevaluation for facilities that have been delayed to determine if there's a better solution, a better meaning more economic or just better or more available solution for reliability needs and service obligations. And I think this non-incumbent requirement is, I think it's opened up to more competition, and we'll see an example of that, how non-incumbent transmission organizations can participate in the process of determining solutions for transmission projects and transmission needs. And interregional coordination, I spoke of this a little bit earlier, where the pairs of planning organizations have to work with each other to determine determine how to evaluate projects that benefit multiple planning groups. So they work together to see if there are better solutions for mutual transmission needs. They share data, and they also need to come up with this methodology that they're going to use to identify and allocate costs between the regions when you have an inter-regional project. And MISO SPP is an example of a pair. They are neighbors, and they have generally come to an agreement. They still have one disagreement on outstanding on project eligibility. I believe is the level of approval required for a project to be eligible for these cost allocation in this interregional process. And they also developed a joint database based on MTEP 15 and 2015 ICP 10 from SPP, where they work together and put together a model that can be used to evaluate transmission between the two regions. And here's a map of the various transmission planning organizations. Most of them are large in area, but our friends in South Carolina is kind of small. Santee Cooper and SCAG have their own planning group. And then up in the Northeast, Northern Maine has a small planning group. But mostly these groups where there are RTOs, those RTOs run the planning processes and the planning groups for the various entities within those groups. So ISO New England, New York ISO, PJM, MISO, SBP, Cal ISO, and ERCOT. Again, all those are entities that are already in place as ISOs, and they take care of the transmission planning. But you have areas like West Connect and the Southeast here, where there isn't an RTO, or I'm sorry, there's not an ISO in place. So they had to come together to form these planning groups to do the planning and look at potential projects for the region. All right, let's take a look back at some things that have happened over the last couple of years related to economic transmission across the U.S. PJM had a market efficiency for long-term proposals for the 2014 through 2015 planning period. The window for that was November of 14 through February of 15, where they were accepting proposals. And during this process, they received 93 proposals for the needs that were identified by PJM, so congestion needs that were identified and constraints. And they got 93 proposals of potential solutions to solve that congestion. And 58 of those were from non-incumbent transmission developers. So they got a lot of outside help. The entities could be within PJM, but it wasn't just the incumbent providing solutions. There were other entities. And just for note, they made over 700 ProMod runs to evaluate these projects. So they had, I think, 8 different scenarios that they were evaluating, and so that times the 93 projects, and you get up close to 700. And I imagine they had to run things more than once sometimes. SBP also did a lot of ProMod analysis as well. They did over 700 ProMod runs, and they may have gotten over 1,000 for the projects they received when they had their window for detailed project proposals back in 2014. And ERCOT here in their 2015 transmission plan, they evaluated 6 projects for economic benefit, and only one of them was selected was approved by ERCOT. Continuing a brief look back, the Southeast Regional Transmission Planning Organization, they performed 3 economic studies during their 2015 process, and of those, there were no proposed solutions, or they didn't identify a need for solutions for those 3 items that they studied. And West Connect, during 2015, although they went through a cycle of transmission planning, regional transmission planning, it was an abbreviated cycle. So they didn't include an economic assessment in their when they were doing their analysis. So there were no economic constraints identified that were put out for determining solutions for. So what's going to happen in 2016? Well, lots of things. Hopefully, my team will win a championship in some sport. But as far as transmission planning, there are several things coming up / going on right now related to economic transmission. In MISO, they have a window open for response to the first project selected under their FERC 1000 process, this Duff-Coleman branch. And so they've had a window open since January 8th of this year, and it'll be open through July 6th of this year for proposals to build this project. So that's exciting that they have their first one. Here is a map, and if you see the green line here, that green line is that's kind of a little squiggly. That's the path that they're looking to build on. And I just made a little map with the annual LNP prices for 2015, just annual average, just so you can see the congestion. So you can see that you have lower prices over to the, that would be the east. So this is, I'm sorry, the west. The blue is southern Illinois, and this is southern Indiana, where this green spot is, where the line is located. And so you have some congestion price difference here. So hopefully building this transmission project, which will connect a couple of 345 lines, so that you'll so this line continues and power can continue to flow across this path. Hopefully it'll have an impact and maybe remove this green and make it more yellow, and maybe even out these prices a little bit. Going back, so SPP has scheduled, proposed for a DPP. That DPP stands for Detailed Project Proposal window from April 11th of this year through May 11th of this year. That's when they'll be accepting proposals to solve the needs that they identify in their ICP-10 process. They already have information out on their website as far as models and stuff for stakeholders to review, so they're well down the road in their process. And so when the window opens, hopefully they'll get lots of participation and lots of good solutions for their transmission needs. PJM has a proposal window scheduled for November of 2016, so later on this year. That'll run through February of 2017. And they are getting data ready and uploaded to their site as well. And there'll be a process for reviewing that, and they'll put out, I believe they pull out a preliminary model first, and then they'll put out a final model closer to that November date that you can use to evaluate the transmission projects that you want to propose to meet their needs. Cal ISO is in the process. They have a planning meeting scheduled on the 29th, so that's about a little less than 2 weeks from now, where they will go over their plan for the year. And Columbia Grid, I added them. They are doing their needs assessment during the first half of 2016. And if they come up with something, we'll hopefully hear. And hopefully they will, if they find anything, they'll open up a window later this year for people to bid and reply to their needs. And Northern Tier Transmission Group, which is kind of is in the WEC. We'll call it the north central part of WEC. They have a deadline of March 31st for submitting projects for them to consider during their process this year. So that's ongoing right now. So that's a little bit about what's up and coming up in 2016 related to economic transmission. So how can ABB help? ABB can help you in several ways with your needs related to economic transmission. First of all, we have software. ProMod is the model used by SPP, MISO, and PJM for their economic transmission evaluation, and that is our product. The GridView product is used by West Connect and Cal ISO and I believe the Northeast utilities for their evaluation. So we have the tools in-house that are used for economic transmission evaluation. We have simulation-ready data that for the ProMod-based clients, they use this information as the starting point for their development of their own data. So they so you have our simulation-ready data for the Eastern Interconnect. And then, for example, MISO would take that. They'll put in their own power flow details and update it with information from the stakeholders to develop what they're using for their MTEP process. But again, our simulation-ready data is the starting point for that. And the advisory services, which is the group I'm a member of, we can perform the economic benefit analysis for you. So if you decide you want to participate in submitting a project to one of these areas that use ProMod or GridView, the advisory service, the advisors here at ADB can assist you by getting you set up to run the analysis, or we can run the analysis and pass the results to you. And that can help if you have a situation, maybe staffing, you can't evaluate all the projects you want and you just need staff to assist you with that. Or if you don't license the software and this is like the only time you might need it, then you might want to come to us to have us run the analysis for you. And again, and the Power System Group, the ABB Power System Consulting Group up in Raleigh can also assist with this from the GridView perspective. And we can also develop hybrid models if you don't have, if there's not good information available. Let's say you wanted to look at something between PJM and New York, for example, and you want to use ProMod for that analysis, where there's not a joint model right now with New York and PJM that's in ProMod that's readily available. But what we've done in the past, for example, is we took the PJM market efficiency database, which is in ProMod format, and we got the power flow information from New York ISO, and we replaced the power flow portion for New York State with the New York information, and did all the mapping associated with that. So they had a ProMod model with New York assumptions for New York and PJM assumptions for PJM, and they were able to do some analysis on the joint benefits of those two markets using ProMod 4. So that's another service that we can provide for you, or anything else. We can talk to you about it and help you in many ways with that. A little more about additional services available from ABB and the advisory team. So again, I'm on the nodal team, so LNP-based services. So anything related to the ISOs in the U.S. as far as the energy markets, be it a LNP price forecast for a node, or evaluating the benefit of joining an ISO as far as the energy market benefits, we can help you with anything from again, the single asset up to a company or entity joining an ISO. Non-nodal things we have our reference case, which is our assessment of trends and conditions in North America for power, fuels, and the environmental markets. And we provide a price forecast out of that reference case that's available. We can use the information from that reference case and nodal services to combine to do asset valuation. So we can do long-term asset valuation of a resource using reference case, some of our software tools, including nodal, so that you can have a nodal-based evaluation. And we have our integrated resource planning team, or IRP team, who does evaluation of IRP and planning and demand for portfolios to evaluate what utilities may need to do to meet requirements related to resource planning. And again, we're all available to support you in many ways. And if you have questions, we'd love to speak to you. Our Energy Market Intelligence website, which is energymarketintel.com. This may have been where you signed up if you didn't sign up directly from the email. But on here is where we have market intelligence information. This is where the Velocity Suite team and the advisors post things, information about what's going on in the market. The Clean Power Plan, for example, which was all the rage until a couple of weeks ago when the Supreme Court stepped in. we have information on that because it's still interesting, and we have our other webcast information on here that you can view on demand. So we hope that you'll go to that website and seek out more information. And that's all I have for you today on economic transmission for 2016. So there's several windows opening up this year that provide opportunity for you to provide potential solutions for transmission projects and evaluate them. And we hope that we can help you in some way with that. And that's all I have, and I'll turn this back over to Dana. Thank you.
So, Keith, I haven't received any questions, and so if you do have questions, we'll just give you a moment if you want to send them through the chat window or the Q&A window. Otherwise, thank you all for joining us today. We'll keep the call going for about a minute just to give people time to submit any questions, but if you wish to leave, this is the end of the presentation, and we really thank you for your attendance.
Yes, thank you for attending.
Keith, just stay on the line just a minute just so I can make sure all questions are addressed.
Each of the planning entities put out information and reports on their transmission plans and their needs as far as congestion and even reliability needs. I didn't talk a lot about the reliability stuff because that's not really our wheelhouse in at least in enterprise software. But that's a trend. That information is available, and I mean, there's lots of participation from entities in these windows. Like you saw, PJM had almost 100 proposals for their planning process in 14 and 15 that they evaluated. And I mean, that's good and they had so many entities. Again, 58 of those proposals were from non-incumbent utilities. So just having more companies participate, I think, is a trend that we hope continues.
Okay, so there are no other questions. We'll go ahead and end the call. Again, thank you all for participating, and Keith, thank you for presenting today. Have a great day.
Thank you.